Hi, can everyone hear me? Yeah. Hi, I'm Tami Robinson. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you, Daniel, for asking me to speak. It's always an honor and a privilege to be asked to be of service in the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous has saved my life, along with the God of my understanding. I'm happy to be here. Thank you guys for coming. My sobriety date is December the 12th. My 8th is my anniversary. Is my wedding anniversary. December the 12th, 2007. Actually, it's also my mother's birthday. With God's grace, she'll be 88 this December. So that's, didn't plan it that way. Just happened. That was God. My home group is A Vision for You in Fayetteville. We're at 336 Ray Avenue. We meet on Tuesdays at 7 o'clock. First Tuesday is a literature discussion. Second is big book study. Third is a tradition corresponding with that month. The fourth is a speaker meeting. And when there is a fifth Tuesday, we do have a workshop. And actually, Daniel just spoke at our group the end of August and did a workshop on 3 legacies, and he did a great job. It was very, very, very well done. It was great job. So I'm here to tell you, and I do have a sponsor, and I do sponsor women. And my sponsor has a sponsor, and so forth. And I'm here to tell you what my life, what it was like, what happened to me, and what I'm like today. And I'm going to do my best not to stay drunk a long time. We all know how to do that. I am going to qualify. I was born at Fort Bragg, on Fort Bragg, the old Womack Army Hospital. I'm an Army brat. Didn't travel a lot. My father, who was actually not my biological father, but he was my father who raised me. So my biological father was also in the military. I didn't really get to see him much growing up at all, really. I think I might have seen him 6 times my whole life. Him and my mother they separated. I believe I might have been 2 years old. And I believe I was 4 or 5, and my mother met my father, whom I call my father. And he took me in like I was his own and raised me like I was his own. We lived in Fayetteville. My father retired in the 70s, and I had a good childhood. I'm the baby out of 6. I have 2 stepbrothers. I was basically raised by myself. At that time, my brother was off in Vietnam. My sister had left. She left at 17, 18, got married. My other sister couldn't get along with my father, so she moved in with my uncle in Tennessee. So I was basically raised by myself, and there was a lot of it, well, not a lot. There was 11 years difference between me and my brother, 10 between my sister, and then 7 between my other sister. So I was raised up in a different era. So my parents learned a lot from me. My sister before me would do anything. She would sneak out the window and never get caught. She used to sneak out all the time. First time I ever snuck out, I got caught. The next day, my dad put storm windows on the windows. So everything I did, I wasn't a good liar, but believe me, I became one. I just couldn't do it. You know, my parents could look at me and tell I was lying. I went to school, good childhood. I don't remember feeling any uneasiness growing up. I always had loving parents. They told me they loved me. They were affectionate. I will tell you, my father, and if he were standing here today, he's deceased. He passed in 2016. But he would tell you that he was an alcoholic. He never came to the fellowship of AA. He knew about it, but he was an alcoholic. But he died sober 20-something years. And he was actually a binge drinker. 15 years of age back then, I'm telling my age now, but 15, I had my learner's permit, and I believe back then, if I can remember right, you could drive without somebody in the car, if I'm not mistaken. And drinking age was 18 for a little while for me. So 15 years of age, I remember being at home. My dad wasn't there. My mom would answer the phone back then when we had home phones. And my mom would answer the phone, and I knew who it was, and it was a little bar in Fayetteville, North Carolina called Kitty's Back Door. And they would call, and they would say, my mom would answer the phone, and they would say, come pick up Cato. And she'd say, no, I'm not, and she hung up the phone. So I'd run in there, I'll go pick him up. And what did I do? I always went to pick him up. The second wreck that I got into was coming back from picking him up. He's semi-passed out on the passenger side, coming down Yakin Road, and used to have a bunch of bars there. All the GIs used to go there and party, and GI came out and hit me head on. Thank God I took my dad's big Lincoln Continental. I had a little small Mustang at that time myself, but I don't know if I would have been here at that time. And my dad, drunk as he was, all he could say was, of course, he asked me if I was okay, and I was. I hurt my shoulder a little bit. But all he could say, he'd seen that GI getting out in his uniform. Back then you could wear the uniforms out, and he said, oh, he's going to be in so much trouble. So I've been around alcohol. It runs in my family. I had an uncle that hemorrhaged to death in the bathroom. Oh, this was years ago. I believe I was in my 20s. He passed away. And it runs on, I think, on both sides of my family. It runs in my family now. I still have relatives in my family now that are still out there drinking. And, I just keep praying for them. And they know where I am. And I've told them that. So I can't get them sober. Excuse me. So I go to school and I start. My first drink was 15 years of age in the old tank trails. There was a friend of mine that lived right down the street. I grew up right off of Yakin Road, right off of the old tank trails, and she had both of her parents drank a lot, so they had plenty of alcohol in the house. So she stole a bottle of MD 2020. First thing I ever drank. Hot. I know it was summertime. It was hot that day, and me and her went to the old tank trail and we drank. And what I didn't realize, that first drunk was a blackout. I didn't even know what a blackout was until I came into the Fellowship of AA and my sponsor had to explain it to me. I wasn't a blackout drinker though. Well, therefore, at the end I was. So I don't remember how I got home. All I remember is waking up with all my clothes on in the shower and the water coming down on me. My parents at that time were working. So I don't remember. That's all I can remember. I don't remember feeling a certain way. I don't remember. I didn't say, oh, I'm going to do that again. I didn't say that. And I'm going to keep it on alcohol. Other substances were already involved for me at that time. I don't really know which one was first, and it really doesn't matter. I know today that I'm an alcoholic. Because, see, when I first came into the Fellowship of AA, I didn't think I was an alcoholic. I knew I had other problems, but I had reservations until I actually wrote out my history, and I went over it with my sponsor, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Normal people don't have to be tipsy, or high enough to go into the bars, or go into a dance club. And, most normal people go in there and get their first drink in there. I was one of those that had to have it there while I'm putting on my makeup, putting on my clothes. I'm going to drink the whole time while I'm getting ready. And I'm going to feel good by the time I walk in that door. I hung around people in high school, or school, middle school, high school, that drank just like I did. I hung out with, back then we used to call them the heads. I dated guys with long hair. I played the guitars. We used to go out to the woods back then, bonfires, and play music all night and drink beer and drink our liquor, alcohol, or whatever else it may be. And just a bunch of people from school, and that's what I did. I was not into sports. I don't really, to be honest with you, I don't remember a lot about high school. Getting ready in October to have our 40th high school year reunion in Fayetteville. I'm excited. This will be my second one, and I'll be sober. So I continued doing that. I skipped school a lot. Getting in trouble a lot for skipping school, sneaking out of the house. I would go and I would leave the house and disappear for 2 days. My dad would always find me. Always find me. My mother sort of just gave up on me a little bit. Not gave up on me, I don't mean it that way. She let my dad handle it. I think it was just too much for her. And my dad being retired sergeant, first sergeant, he had that discipline and that structure, and it was, this is going to be this way, and this is how it's going to be, and you have a curfew, and, he used to tell me, he said, you would wait, I think you wait at the end of that road to make sure you're going to be late. Because I could never be on time when I would go anywhere, go to the mall, back then it was the mall, and, to the movies, or to the skating rink, or wherever it may be, or back, as I got older, 18, I was going into the bars. So I continued getting in trouble. A few times I got, took down the police department, and back then, it wasn't like it is today. My father would come in, talk to the law for a little bit, and here we go, I'm gone, leave everything there, whatever was laying on the table, whatever I got caught with. And that's how it was. Same thing with school. He would go and talk to the principal. I don't know how I made it through the 9th grade. I missed 28 days, and don't know how I made it through. I wasn't an A student, average student, maybe C's, some B's, but mostly C's, some D's. I hated school. I liked seeing my friends at school, and that's just how it was. I graduated. How that happened, I don't know. When I graduated from high school, I left. Let me back up a little bit. 12 years of age, I started working. I feel that I was raised a workaholic. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Both my parents, my father retired from the military, started some businesses up here and there, and both of my parents worked, and they were self-made, and they worked, and they taught me to work. At the age of 12, I was standing on an egg crate, the old egg crates they used to have, and at a register. My dad owned a little grocery store at the time, and he would be stocking groceries, and I would be ringing up on the register. So I started at 12 years old and didn't stop for a long time until my first marriage. After high school, I went to college. Now this is where my drinking really took off. I started going to the bars. I would go to school Monday through Thursday. I went to a 2-year business school, and we only went to school Monday through Thursday. Thursday afternoon, I would leave to go work. My dad made sure that I was going to go work. It didn't matter where it was going to be. He had different businesses in different cities. I would be going one way, my mom this way, and my dad this way. And there was maybe 2 weekends out of 2 years that I ever stayed at school. So I partied all during the week. I loved the bars. I loved to play pool. I loved to drink. Back then, when the disco was out, and and of course I liked rock and roll. I liked everything. Definitely liked the men, and I put myself in positions that no woman really should put herself in, and woke up in places I didn't know where I was at and who I was with, and don't know how I graduated from that school. A lot of times I'd go into class, I'd fall asleep. I had 2 good friends in that school that really, they couldn't keep up with me anymore. And it just got to be where I just went on my own, and it got to be bad. I graduated from that school, and my parents at that time had moved to South Carolina, so I went to South Carolina, moved back in with my parents. I was 20 years old at the time. I didn't use my degree. I had an associate's degree in fashion merchandising, retail management, and went right back to work for my father because that's where the money was. I was used to making good money, and what can I say? I love the money, and that could buy me everything I needed. Besides material things, everything, my drink and anything else that I wanted. And I always had a car, and I always could go out. I could pay for my own way. I didn't have to depend on a man. Well, what became of that was I started taking care of the man I was dating financially, and that was my pattern. This is where it started. In my 20s, basically, and most of those relationships were either verbally or physically abusive, and I wasn't raised that way. My dad used to tell me, he'd say, you could be in a room full of millionaires and there'd be one bum, and that's the one you're going to go with. And, at that time, he was right. He was right, because that's it. I like the bad boys, and that's what I veered to, and it's just that pattern, and it started and it didn't end for a long time. I stayed in South Carolina, lived in Sumter, would go out to the bars and do other things, and would come back home, and by the next day, my father and my mother knew where I was at, who I was with, what I was doing, and it was a really small town at Sumter, South Carolina. Well, I started going to Columbia, and if anybody knows that area, that's a long back road going from Sumter to Columbia. How I never got a DUI, that was God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. I'll never know. I never understand why I never got a DUI. So eventually, I ended up moving to Columbia and still working for my father. He had a business in Columbia, and there we go. Again, moving a man in, getting an apartment, moving a man in right away. Took care of one for 7 years. more physically abusive, and then verbally. So, ended that relationship, and I'm going to fast forward 28 years of age. I'm in Columbia, South Carolina in a bar, and I meet a man. 3 days later, he asked me to marry him. 4 months later, we get married. I'd never been married before. I have no children, and my family thought I was pregnant, and I was not pregnant. He knew really nothing about my family. He met my family after he asked me to marry him. Well, should have seen all this when he lied to me about what his last name was. Didn't have a vehicle, didn't have a job, just got out of prison. Spent 3 years and almost killing a guy. And he was a bad boy. Just one of those, liked to fight. He was a hustler, he was a gambler, he was a con. He'd been on his own since he was 11 years old. I even cheated on me before we got married. Now, this is the delusion that I was in, the delusion, all the alcohol that I was drinking, that delusion. Still married the man, stayed with him for 11 years. There was some things going on legally with my family in 1991, and I just say it, my dad had to go to prison to serve some time in federal prison, and that devastated me. And actually, I had gotten some trouble myself, and my dad took the plea from me, and anyway, it devastated me that he had to go. You can tell I'm a daddy's girl. And so we decided that we were going to go on the road, me and my husband. Well, first of all, I had a little bit of money saved up, and I went out and bought a mobile home, 5 acres of land in Lugoff, South Carolina, 2 Rottweilers. Bought my husband a old beat-up, I can't remember, one of those old beat-up Jeeps, I can't even remember what they were called. And within 6 months, it was all gone. All my furniture was gone, all my jewelry was gone, my mobile home was getting foreclosed, my land was getting foreclosed, and somebody even stole our dogs. So we decided we're going to go on the road, and we're going to go up to the Midwest, and we're going to do what we do, and I'm not proud of it, and I was a thief. I was a con, and he taught me how to do a few things, and how to con people and to steal, and that's what I did for 11 years. And I put myself in other situations where, we were getting chased by people, guns pulled on us, knives pulled on us, bar owners. We would go into mom and pop bars and steal, manipulating gambling machines is what we were doing. And, but what happened was, the first couple of years, it got in my blood, that adrenaline of making that fast money. And, but never had any money, Could make $1,000 a day and would wake up the next morning and not have a dime. Not a dime. Wouldn't have anything to eat. I would have to scam McDonald's or Hardee's or Wendy's for food, and I got good at it. And, we had to steal and take it back for, to get us a little bit of what we called a bank to get started on. And going up and, and being in Pittsburgh and Detroit and, and Milwaukee up in the projects and, the only white girl for 50 miles and going up in there, the middle of the night. And, I thank God I don't live that way anymore, why and what I was thinking, but I knew what it was because it was just to get that next drink. That's all it was to do, to get that next drink. And that's all I did was chase the whole 11 years we were married. And I'll say again, we didn't have any children. He had been married before and had one son. He'd never seen his son before. I think I met him one time. So 2002, I decided that I was going to get a divorce for the second time. First time I left him, I stayed gone 2 weeks. And there was other reasons I stayed with him. And I knew I loved him. I wasn't in love with him. The verbal abuse was it was horrific. And I became the person that he was. When he started talking to me that way, I started talking to him the same way. I remember being in a store sometimes, and he would yell at me or call me names. And I would have women come up to me, "Ma'am, do you need me to call the police?" And no, because this is the way he talks to me. I didn't say that to them, but I'm thinking, this is how I live. This is the way my life is today. I wasn't raised this way. I was raised with good morals, good work ethics. I was raised that the man treats you right and respects you. My parents instilled that in me, even though I didn't go that way, but it was all about the alcohol. So I ended up leaving him in 2002, came back to, my parents were back in Fayetteville, and my father was out of prison, and they were back in their, this is a new home they had, and I continued to go back to work for my father. I continued to drink. That was all I was doing, was drinking. Of course, my dad didn't even like that. He would always tell me, you got a problem, da-da-da-da-da. Now, I'll back up. 2005 was my first AA meeting. I don't know where it came from. I was in Fayetteville. I went to a meeting. I don't know why. I found a meeting. I went in. Back then it was a 5:30 meeting. It was a smoking meeting. It was a low ceiling, and I smoke. And I went in. I stayed for 15 minutes. I don't know what anybody said. It was packed. And I walked out the door, and I said to myself, I don't belong here. I don't need to be here. 2 years later is when I got sober. So my first treatment center was 28-day program. I did steps 1 through 5 in 28 days. My 5th step, I met the lady 5 minutes before I was to do my 5th step. I was not honest. I got out of that treatment center. 3 days later, I started going back into the bars, and other things came into play there. 2006, 2007, I went into a second treatment center, a long-term treatment center, because my family and some family friends that their son had went to this program kept telling my parents she needs a long-term treatment, because, see, I had forgotten how to live. I couldn't hardly talk on the phone anymore to people. I couldn't hold a conversation with you, anything that was, of any substance. I didn't take care of myself. Brush my teeth, wash myself, whatever it may be. It was all about that next drink. That's all it was about. Where am I going to get it? Who am I going to calm? Who am I going to steal from? Where am I going to break into? What am I going to do? I got to get my next drink. I need it now. And I definitely don't want to run out. But by that time, I was running out constantly, because it came to the point where I really couldn't get drunk anymore. I started coughing up blood. I would have to stop, because I'd start drinking in the car. And I would have to stop and throw up blood, but I couldn't get drunk anymore. My second treatment center, I went in, I stayed 3 months. It's a long term, anywhere from 9 to 12 months in Raleigh, and called my dad one night. I had a sponsor. I don't really remember. I don't think I was really keeping up with my sponsor, probably sponsor in name only. She was coming, though. She was coming every week to do book work with me. She came to that facility every week and sat in that room and did book work with me. And I didn't understand a word. I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't ready. 3 months later, I called my dad. I said, Dad, I'm cured. What did my father do? He didn't tell my mother, didn't tell any of my sisters. I'm going to pick up Tammy. He came to pick me up. My mother was at the beach. He comes, picks me up. I'll never forget. It was storming, raining. The treatment center made me go outside. They made me carry all my bags in the pouring rain. They tried to talk me out of it, asked me if I'd talk to my sponsor, and I lied and said yes. I called my sponsor when I got in the car with my father, and she said, well, keep in touch, and hung up the phone. I got to the beach, knocked on the door. My mother answers the door, and some of us know that mother look. She opened the door and she said, what are you doing here? And I'm like, oh, Mom's going to be so happy. I'm thinking the whole way, I've got 3 months sober. She's going to be so happy, and she's going to be so proud of me. Well, that wasn't the case. Because, see, I drank for 30 years. I put my parents through hell, and my family. And my dad would bail me out. He was my biggest enabler, as you can see that. I didn't suffer enough consequences. So I left there. This time, my father had some rentals. He let me live in the rental house in Fayetteville, rent-free. I think my mother was probably even paying my electric bill. I was working off and on. My father, I'd quit, my dad would fire me. I'd quit, my dad would fire me. We were so codependent with each other. It was terrible. And I didn't realize that. I didn't know, but it was, like I said, here we go again. It was all about the next drink. I was drinking at work. Whatever it was, if I even came to work, if I've even had any sleep, whatever it may be. So my dad would always tell me, just get on your knees and ask God for help. And I would try so hard. And I'm like, I can't do it, That's what he did, But what I realized years later was my dad was a dry drunk. He was a dry drunk. I still loved him. But when I had a few years sober, probably about 4 or 5 years, I realized he was a dry drunk. And I just had to, keep praying for him and just keep doing what I'm doing. And what happened was I stayed sober and I kept doing what I was doing and I kept involved in Alcoholics Anonymous, and he got better because I got better. And I didn't look at him that way anymore. So 4 months. 4 months from leaving that treatment center in 2007, it took me to hit the worst bottom that I have ever hit in my life. I started doing things that I thought I'd never do. I would look at women and say, I'll never do that. I'll never be like that. And what happened? I started breaking into my family's homes and their businesses. I started going to my dad's businesses and stealing stuff out of there just to go take it back to Walmart. He'd have to come in and make sure everything was at the phones. Back then when the phones were they're still needed, your regular phones, they're in our offices or whatever. And just things, and just stealing money out of the drink machines and the snack machines and trying to break into the safes. Well, I could get into the safes. I didn't have to break into those. But a lot of times they got smart and they quit leaving the money in there. Because they thought, Tammy, my dad wouldn't change the locks. He wouldn't do it because he knew I was going to get in anyway. So it got so bad, my one sister would come visit me at my house, and she would take me because she knew that I wasn't eating. And she would come and get me, knew if I'd been up for 2 or 3 days or whatever, and she would come and get me, and she would keep banging on the door. I'd think, okay, she's going to leave. She was going to leave, so I can keep doing what I'm doing. I'd be by myself. And she would keep banging, so I'd finally answer the door. She'd take me to go get me something to eat. My sisters got to the point where they wouldn't even bring their purses around me anymore. They'd leave them in their trunk, locked up in their car. My mother wouldn't even let me in the house. If she did, it'd be right there in the front. If I went to the bathroom, she'd follow me. She followed me because that's what kind of person, I was already a thief, and I was stealing from them and lying and manipulating and conning, and, I should have had charges with people that they worked with that they did not because of my dad. My dad got me out of it. And so 4 months, finally, my father came and did an intervention with my nephew, one of my brother at the time, he's deceased now, and one of my sisters. And he looked straight in the eye. By the time he came to that house, I had nothing left in the house. Because, see, I had got stuff and lost it, got it and lost, back and forth, back and forth. And by the time he came to the house that day, I was sleeping on a blanket. All my furniture was gone, what I could sell, what I could get rid of. All my jewelry was gone. I luckily still had my vehicle. I don't even believe I had a phone at that time. And my dad looked me straight in the eye and he said, either you're going to go get help right now or I want you out. And my mind, the alcoholic mind, that delusion, oh, no, you can't kick me out of here. I'm going to call the police. Well, there was no lease. There was nothing I could have done, But that was my thinking. Well, I left. My sister let me move in to her house in Fayetteville. She owned a bar in Fayetteville at that time. She put me right to work at the bar as a bartender. I worked there for 2 weeks. I stole as much as I could from her out of her house. She would ask me, how do you find my money? Because she's in the bar business, so she has a lot of cash. She would hide it here. She would hide it there. She thought she was doing a good job. And I would look at her and say, Star, I'm a thief. I'm a thief. And She said to me one day, she came in the house and she said, when I come in here and all my stuff is gone and it's at the pawn shop, I'm going to kill you. And anybody that knows my sister, she meant it. So I had been on a 2 or 3 day run, and I was coming back to my sister's house, and I was going to clean up, I was going to eat, I was going to change my clothes, and I was going to go back out, and I was going to try to find some money some way, somehow, and I never went back out. I lay down on the couch, nobody was home, and I laid on the couch and I started crying. And for the first time, 45 years old, I asked God to please help me. It wasn't a foxhole prayer. I was ready. I finally surrendered because, see, I didn't know what surrender meant. Because I thought, well, I didn't think I had surrendered. I thought I was ready. And I finally, for that day, I surrendered. And I believe for me is when I did my first step. I got on the phone because I remembered I had a phone number in there for a gentleman. He was just like a father figure to me in AA. He was an old timer. I didn't know who else to call. And I said, can you come pick me up and take me back to treatment in Raleigh tomorrow? He said, yes, I can. He said, what's your address? He gave me, and he said, be waiting outside at 9 o'clock, and he hung up the phone. I was waiting outside for that man. He brought somebody else with him, drove me to back to Raleigh to the same treatment center, and walked in, and he handed me $20. He said, good luck. That's all he said. So I went through this treatment center, did what they told me, got a sponsor, got the same sponsor that I had the first time, and was willing to do anything, mostly anything. Don't get me wrong, I was not perfect. I didn't drink, though. I didn't drink. And I saw my life start changing. That woman would come in once a week, and she'd do the same sponsor, come in there and work that bookwork with me in that room. She'd pick me up twice a week, and her home group became my home group. I got sober in Raleigh. That's where I got sober. I lived there for 7 years. My home group was the principals group, and very structured, very disciplined group. And it's actually the group that Steve Mitchell helped get started. A lot of you may know him. He's actually my sponsorship family. I've got a soft place in my heart for old timers, because they have saved my life. They have called me on my bull in sobriety, and they've told me what I should do and what I shouldn't, even when I didn't like it. And I'd get resentful and then talk to my sponsor, and I'd say, how dare them tell me that? And she'll say, well, I would just suggest that you pray for them. And I did. And, I see now, because early in sobriety, I couldn't see it. I couldn't see why they were telling me. They were trying to help me because they loved me. And they wanted me to stay sober. So I got sober in this home group. I got active right away. First time, as soon as I joined that home group, I was already going to the meeting. My sponsor looked at me. She goes, I want you up in that line right there, and I want you to greet people. And I said, what? She said, yes, I want you to hold out your hand. If you don't even want to say anything, I want you to hold out your hand, and I want you to just say hello. And I was like, oh no, my hands at that time were still shaking. I would constantly shake my foot. I couldn't keep any thoughts together. I couldn't comprehend when I would read. I couldn't comprehend anything I was reading. But I kept on doing it, and I kept on doing it, and I kept on doing it until I wanted to do it. And I watched my sponsor, and I watched what she did. And I followed her, and I hung on to her coattail, and I just followed her. She got me involved in the prison, CFC. I was a CFC representative. One of the best things I've ever done in the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. How rewarding. Because every time I walked out of them prison doors, and that big clang, I knew that could be me in there. If I ever would have made it. But personally, I think I would have died. I would have died. I don't think I even would have made it to prison. I was spiritually, emotionally, mentally, everything dead inside. I was like a walking zombie. And so this woman did all this, and worked the steps with me, and I became a part of the home group, and I learned, how the structure of Alcoholics Anonymous is by just continuing. And she would say, okay, you're going to the convention with me, or you're doing this with me, and we're going to do this, and I want you to go do a 12-step call with me. I didn't have any idea. She'd school me on the way there, and just amazing. And I had that sponsor for 10 years. when I moved back to Fayetteville in 2013. By that time, I had gotten married, been married 3 months, met my husband in Alcoholics Anonymous. He had, he had 4 more years than I do. And we got married 2 years after we started dating, and we were married 3 months, and we both quit our jobs in Raleigh and moved back to Fayetteville. My father, well, he wasn't really diagnosed, but I knew what it was. He had dementia. So we quit our jobs and we moved to Fayetteville, and went to work there, and I really came to Fayetteville to take care of my father, and that's what I did. He got to see me sober for 9 years, and I'm so grateful for that. And today I get to take care of my mother with dementia. Sorry. I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I can do that today. I'm sorry. I moved in with my mother and father. Me and my husband did after my father started falling, and we're still there. Me and my husband are still there, and thank God, because my mother's, she's can't be left alone, and she has her good days and her bad days. So I just try to do the best I can and just keep on trucking, and that's all I can do. But I've never lost the sight that I need to stay in Alcoholics Anonymous. You guys saved my life. I found God in Alcoholics Anonymous. See, I was never raised in church. I went to church with my grandmother. I went to church for a funeral, went to church for a wedding. My father, would read the Bible, and we would talk about, religion and God, here and there. My mother, we would talk some, but it wasn't, prayer wasn't a part of my life every day. I wasn't raised where you're going to burn in hell if you sin. I wasn't any of that. So I had no conception. And that's what my first sponsor taught me. She taught me how to pray. She would, teach me and say, just say it. If you don't even know what you're saying or you don't even mean it, get on your knees and pray. And, but I'll come in the fellowship and I'd hear you guys talking about God. And I knew it wasn't a religious program. I knew that. I knew it was more spiritual. And I just kept on listening, and I kept on listening to you guys. And I kept on working the steps. And finally, I seen myself start changing, and I started loving myself again. I didn't look so disgusted at myself when I look in the mirror. My skin started clearing up. My eyes started glowing. And I became a part of, my home group cared about me, and they were concerned about me. My brother passed, and I missed like 2 weeks of meetings, and my sponsor called, and I was still keeping up with my sponsor. And she's like, Tammy, they're not scared you're drinking. They're just concerned about you. Who of any of my drinking buddies are going to do that? None, When my brother passed, I was able to be there with him, and I was able to put my hand on his arm. And I felt the presence of God. And I was able to make my living amends, my verbal amends with him before he died. I was able to be there for my mother and father. And what a blessing. What a blessing. There were so many times where I wouldn't show up to family functions, or half the time my family probably didn't even want me there. It's like I am now, if I have certain relatives coming in my mother's house, I start hiding things. And I think about that sometimes, and I'm like, God, this is what my family used to do for me, with me, And to look where I was and where I'm at today is just God's grace. And I remember being sober for the first couple of years. Actually, when I first got sober, and I thought, I'm going to stay in AA for 2 years, and that's all. And then I'm going to leave. Then I won't need them. I'll get all what I need. But that never happened. Thank God it never happened. My first sponsor. So I had her for 10 years. I kept her when I moved from Raleigh and back to Fayetteville, and I kept her. And at the end, I couldn't get her on the phone. She wasn't returning my phone calls. And this wasn't like my sponsor at all. Now, see, she had probably, if I had 10 years, I think she had about 16, 17 years at that time. And I talked to one of my sister sponsees that had her as a sponsor, and she was having the same problem. And this girl lived in Raleigh. She had stopped going to that home group. She was trying different meetings, is what I heard. And so I had called her and I left her a message. I said, I really need to talk to you, da-da-da. She called me back, and I don't like the word fired. I let her go, and I cried the whole time. Now, I had this woman for 10 years. She knew every single thing, every dirty little thing about this girl. And I cried the whole time because, see, it's about my sobriety. And I had to have somebody that was going to be there for me. And all she said to me was, I knew it was coming. And made the comment that she had to mend with her family. Well, this woman that was so active in the area, in the district, in her home group, in the corrections, just left AA. Left. She got her job back. She got her a beautiful townhouse. I just hope that she's not drinking today. I don't know. I'm hoping, and I'm sure she's not. I just hope she's not. I tried to reach out to her a few times after that, and Steve Mitchell told me, he said, quit calling her. Quit calling her. And he was right. I quit calling her. Well, while all this is going on, I called another girl, lady in Wilson, North Carolina. Somebody else came to mind. There was really nobody that I thought in Fayetteville. I just had this woman. She was the first person that came to my mind. She was inspiration to me from early on. And I called her, and she went through the spiel. Have you talked to your sponsor? And she knew who my sponsor was. Have you talked to her? Da-da-da. And I said, no, this was before I talked to my first sponsor. And she told me all what to do, and I did it, and it was hard. It was hard. I mean, I cried through the whole thing talking to my first sponsor. And so I've got this sponsor now that lives in Wilson, and I am learning new stuff. She is definitely helping me with the women I sponsor. She is helping me to be more, to be able to set my boundaries better with my sponsees, because I know I can't get anybody drunk and I can't keep them sober. And what I'm told to do, if one falls out, just move on to the next woman, because there's going to be somebody else. If you don't have any, there's going to be somebody else that comes in. And God puts a woman in my life when He knows I need it. Probably don't think I need it. I don't think I need it, but it's always when God sees fit. And that's what's happened to me. That's what's happened to me with everything. I've had so many spiritual experiences. Imagine the baby out of 6 siblings, the worst child of all of them. And my parents handed over all their business to me, all their personal finances, all their business finances, all the legal stuff, to the worst child. I would have never thought I would be standing up here telling you this. And that's God's grace. That's God's grace. But I have to do some work, and I have to keep coming, and I have to keep talking to the newcomers and the old timers. Newcomers saved my life too. A lot of times newcomers will say things or share in a meeting. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to hear that. I need to start doing that again. I need to start doing a gratitude list again. Because there might be something that I'm going through at that time that I might need to hear and think, oh yeah, this is what this newcomer said. I am trying to give back what was so freely given to me. One of the best things in the fellowship of AA that I have found that has helped me to grow is sponsoring other women. Because I have to look at myself. When I tell a woman something, am I doing it? When they don't call me, am I calling my sponsor? And I've had to catch myself, and I've had to talk to my sponsor. Oh my gosh, I'm telling you that she's not calling me, and I didn't call you last week. Because I want that accountability. I still need it. I feel that the more I get sober, the more I need it. The more I need my sponsor. I can't explain it. Life has shown up. My brother's passed. My father's passed. There's been more financial stuff going on in my family, more legal stuff that has been all just put on me. And I'll never forget, I called my first sponsor that one day, and I said, I feel like I'm taking charge, and I don't know. And she says, you have no choice. You have to. because there's nobody else that can do it. And I'm like, you know how your sponsor says something to you, that little, just one little simple sentence, and it's like, why didn't I think about that? That light bulb goes off. But today my life is wonderful. You know, I stay busy. I work from home. I get to take care of my mother today. It's not easy, but I do the best I can. Thank God for my husband. He's a wonderful man. He's brought 2 wonderful children in my life. Well, they're not children. They're in their 20s. We've got a wonderful godchild. 3 years old. We're leaving Sunday to go to Carolina Beach, me and my husband and my godchild. And we're looking forward to it. And, you know, today I can drive my car, and my license is legal, my plates are legal. My window's not, you know, broke out with all the plastic on it. No, it's not taped up with duct tape. And, you know, I don't get scared when a blue light comes on behind me anymore, because I don't have anything to worry about. I haven't done anything today. You know, my life is not perfect. I'm not perfect by any means. One of the reasons I fell in love with my husband is when I've seen him at meetings. We met on the Grapevine Committee in Raleigh, and I would listen to him share, and he was so spiritual. And he was so calm and so at ease, and I'm just everywhere, you know. I still can get like that, you know. That's just my demeanor. But the first 5 or 6 years, it was, you know, it was still there. But you know, that man has been through my side and been through my family. And I told him one day, I said, "You didn't know you were marrying into this, did you?" And he said, "I married you, not your family." And but he has brought 2 wonderful children, millennials, in my life, and we're hoping to God that we're not saving a seat for my stepdaughter. If we are, she knows where we're at, and she knows. You know, she didn't get to see her father drink a lot, thank God. And I just can't tell you how much gratitude I have for Alcoholics Anonymous and for you guys for help saving my life and the God of my understanding. And I can say today, and I didn't understand this when I heard it the first time, and I'll be quiet, is that I'm grateful to be a recovered alcoholic today. Thank you for letting me share. Thank you.